somewhere along the way, rest became suspicious. Stillness became this feeling of guilt. And silence became shame. And productivity became proof that we deserve to exist. And so we started believing that if we're not producing something, we're in essence wasting time. That if we're not contributing, we're just taking up space. That if we're not improving, we're really falling behind. But here's a question we rarely ask though. Who was it that taught us this? Who decided that our worth needed to be earned in hours or output or effort? At Uber Bintegers, we don't confuse performance with purpose. We want to build lives of integrity and intimacy and not exhaustion and applause. So let's dismantle this lie that productivity is proof of our existence. See, there's this cult, if you will, of constantly doing stuff. We were raised in a culture that worships busyness. And it doesn't just reward hard work, it actually glorifies overworking oneself, overextending oneself. And you're probably familiar with the script that says, I don't know, I'm just slammed right now, right? Or I haven't taken a day off in months. Or I'm running on fumes right now, but I'm still pushing through. And we tend to nod in admiration as if burnout is this badge of honor that we wear. And then we brag about the exhaustion, the way that we brag about our success. And we equate fatigue with value. And we equate depletion with devotion. And further, we equate momentum with meaning. But when you pause, I think, long enough to look around, suddenly you may start to see it clearly. That this isn't really ambition as much as it may be an addiction. Addiction to approval, addiction to productivity, addiction to being needed or to being seen as someone who gets things done, right? And underneath all of this hustle is, I think, one quiet fear that says, if I stop, then who am I going to be? What's my worth? There's a fear, I think, beneath all this hustle. So maybe let's take a moment and name this directly. The reason that so many of us cannot rest isn't because we love our work, I think, as much as because we're terrified that in the process we'll disappear. We don't just hustle for money. We're hustling for our identity. We hustle for belonging. We hustle for permission to take up space in a world that measures human value by our usefulness. And so we say that we're driven, but often I think we're just scared. Scared of the silence, scared of the insignificance, scared of what our own thoughts might say when the noise just dies down. And so we fill every minute that we can with motion and with hoping and the noise that will help us drown the doubt. But all that motion just does is just keeps us disconnected. Disconnected from our bodies, disconnected from our relationships, disconnected from our joy and our own sense of worth. And so we've built this culture that mistakes functioning for living, right? And this is not sustainable. See, integrity is the courage to stop performing. It's, I would say, like the antidote to this performance trap that so many of us find ourselves caught in. Because integrity is alignment. Alignment between what's true inside of us and what we're living on the outside. And if what's true on the inside is that we're exhausted or disconnected or just longing for peace, then performing productivity is really a betrayal of integrity. So integrity would whisper something like, you are not the sum of your output, right? Or you do not have to justify your existence through your effort. Or you are allowed to rest without the guilt. But that's, I think, how most of us were raised, isn't it? We were, in essence, raised to equate doing with being, right? To believe that if we're not constantly improving ourselves, then we're really falling behind. Or to believe that slowing down is a weakness. So when we try to stop, our nervous system sort of panics and we feel restless and we feel useless and we feel like imposters in our own lives. And that discomfort, that's, I think, withdrawal, right? Withdrawal from a culture of over-identification with productivity. And I think the path back to integrity is learning to stop performing without losing that sense of who we are, that sense of self. To let our beingness exist without our doingness, constantly needing to defend it. So intimacy is being known beyond what we bring to the table. And I love defining it as intimacy, because many of us don't just perform for success. I think we're really trying to perform for connection. And we believe that being valuable to others means that we have to be first useful to them. That if we stop giving, if we stop helping, if we stop producing or entertaining, then people will lose interest in us. And so we hide behind our productivity. We hide behind our productivity just hoping that our usefulness will protect us from the rejection. And we say things like, I'm just being responsible, right? But what that really means is, I don't know if people will still love me if I stop serving their needs. And that's not intimacy. That's a transaction. Do you see it? Intimacy means you're letting yourself be seen beyond your usefulness. It means that you're allowing others to meet you in your being without having to do anything along the way. It means that you're showing up tired or slow or messy, and then still believing that you're worthy of love, even in those zones. It's the courage to say, I'm not bringing very much today, but I'm still here. I'm still present. And to trust that here, being in this moment, is enough. The cost of constant productivity is something we have to make a remark about, because when productivity becomes proof of our existence, in that moment, I think is when we lose our humanity. We forget how to play. We forget how to rest. We forget how to breathe without having to have a purpose for it, right? And then I think we wonder why joy feels a lot like work, why the relationships feel like projects, and why peace feels a lot like laziness. And so we start managing our lives like corporations. We measure our return on investment for every interaction that we extend, and we track the metrics for everything that once felt sacred. But life is not a spreadsheet, and love is not a performance review. You don't have to earn your right to exhale. You don't have to schedule your soul. You don't have to even justify your joy. You are allowed to just exist. So, what does reclaiming rest as resistance look like, though? See, rest is not weakness. Rest is like a rebellion, if you will. It's how we reclaim our worth from a system that profits off of our exhaustion, especially. Rest is saying, I will not let my identity be defined by my efficiency. I will not measure my worth by productivity. Right? I will not burn myself up to prove that I'm alive. Integrity calls us to realign, and intimacy asks us to reconnect. And together, both of those invite us to live from a place where our existence is enough before we ever have to lift a finger to prove so. So how do we start this? I think it's always helpful to start small. We give ourselves permission to do less, for example, or to say no without the guilt, right? To stop multitasking every emotion, or to let dishes sit for a day, to take a nap without having to earn it, right? Because the moments that we stop performing for our worth is when we begin remembering that it was there all along. The worth of being, right? Let's end on this point here. See, productivity may create results, but it can never create worth. Worth existed long before the calendar, before your paycheck, before the to-do list. It was always there. Worth existed even before your achievements, or even your mistakes, or your milestones that you've hit along the way. Worth existed when you were born, and it will exist long after your resume fades. See, you were never meant to hustle to prove that you deserve to be here in this moment. You were meant to be here. And when you realize that, you can build from that sacred ground. My dear listener, tomorrow, I want to explore what happens when we finally learn to say no from self-respect instead of from anger, and how boundaries become an expression of our worth. But for this moment, for today, while we're here, remember this. You are not your productivity. You are not your performance. You are not your proof. What you are is you are enough. Right now, doing nothing at all. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you tomorrow in tomorrow's episode.